Hi, welcome back to Affaircare, our little series on our basic concepts. Boy, we're getting close to the end here, aren't we? Today we are talking about the steps that you can take to reconcile your marriage after an affair is already over. This whole month we've been talking about our basic concepts to introduce you to our new program that's coming up that's called 90 Days to Save Your Marriage and Save You. This should be coming about October 1st. It's our hope. And so this month, the month of September, we've been going over our basic concepts every day. I think we started on September 1st with the very first podcast, which is called Intro Basic Concepts. And we went kind of in depth into the terms that we use, how we think here at Affaircare, so that you kind of can understand what we're talking about. So if you have not listened to that one, you may want to go back and listen to it, because then you'll get all the terminology down straight. But to summarize, I will let you know that we do think of the love in your marriage as a campfire, and there are actions that you can do that will help the love grow. This is called a love kindler, and that would be honoring the commitment that you made in your vows. And then we have actions that you could take that will put out the fire. These we call love extinguishers, and we use the term neglect with them because you are neglecting the commitment that you made in your vows. And we spent the first 2 weeks of the month, September, going over all of the love kindlers and all of the love extinguishers so that you could get some ideas about things that you can do to make the love in your marriage grow, to feel again that feeling of love, and also the things that you're doing to look at yourself and look at the things that you're doing to put out the fire. If you're in a situation where you've been trying to reconcile and it feels like, one step forward, one step back, one step forward, one step back, one step forward, one step back. Well, I can tell you what the trouble is. You're doing kindlers and you're trying and you think to yourself, wow, I'm doing all these kindlers and I still don't feel love. Well, it's because there's also the extinguishers. And so every time you do something positive, then you also put it out. And likewise, your spouse is probably doing the same thing for you. They may do something positive, but then they put it right out with their extinguisher actions. So you need to stop the extinguishers and at the same time simultaneously start the kindlers in order to start growing love. Then last week we went over the steps that you can take if your spouse is actually in an affair right now, the steps to end the affair. Now, the steps are like pretty much gradually increasing in drasticness, if you will, to end the affair. And because a marriage can survive if your spouse gets mad at you, but your marriage cannot survive if there's adultery going on in the marriage. Eventually, the marriage ends, and it's no longer adultery because there's a divorce. So you want to take the steps in the order that we talked about them, so that it's gradually increasing, and at each point give them the disloyal spouse a chance to end the affair. So this week we're going over what to do to reconcile after the affair has ended. Bear in mind that there are some people that the affair ends and they just don't want to return to the marriage, and there's not too much we can do with that kind of situation. In that instance, you're going to want to recover yourself personally and still do some work on yourself, but you would not be working on recovering the marriage. You'd be working on recovering you and who you are and the kind of person you want to be. The first thing we talked about this week was the steps that need to be in place. I call them the pre-reconciliation steps, things that need to be in place before you can even start reconciling. Then yesterday we talked about commitment, which was a pretty long one because commitment is a biggie, and a lot of people don't understand it. They're entirely, what they do understand, they think of it entirely backwards. So if you think, well, hey, I understand commitment, you might want to look at yesterday's, because we found usually people just don't have a great understanding of what commitment is, and without that, it's really hard to move forward in reconciliation. That's the first thing you need to understand, is what is commitment, and how do emotions relate to a commitment. Now, between you and me and the fence post, I will tell you right now that my dear hubby is the one that's, when we have our class, that's going to be teaching about commitment, because, he has the firmest grip on it you would not believe. Much better than I do. So I'm kind of looking forward to that, and I hope you guys are too, looking forward to meeting my dear hubby, David. Today we're going to talk about step number 2, and this one's probably, oddly enough, going to be a shorter one. It's the step of forgiveness. Now, you'd think forgiveness is a really hard one, right? Because people have so much trouble with, how do I forgive them? Well, let's start with a couple of myths about forgiveness. The first big myth there is about forgiveness is that that there's a difference between forgiving and reconciling. That is to say, it is entirely possible that your spouse hardens their heart and they go off and continue their affair, there's a divorce, and then they live their life and you guys are not reconciled. And you could still, when they do that, you can still choose to forgive them. So there is the myth is that forgiving equals reconciling. That's the myth part, okay? And in real life, that's just not true. The second common myth about forgiveness is that forgiving is the same as forgetting. And in real life, I've been on both sides of the affair situation. I've been a loyal spouse in my first marriage. I was a disloyal spouse in my second marriage. And trust me, you don't forget, ever. You don't forget being the betrayed spouse. You don't forget that betrayal feeling, and it kind of sticks with you. It changes who you are. But you also, when you're disloyal, you never, ever forget what you did and who you did it to. And so just let me just bust that myth right now. The third myth about forgiving is that if you forgive someone, you condone their behavior, or that it makes you a doormat. I'll just say, forgiving does not mean I'm going to allow you, I'm condoning this. It doesn't give your moral approval. What's immoral is immoral. That's not ours to judge. It's God's to judge. But you can forgive someone, even sometimes when they don't ask you for it. If you need to move on or move away from the person, forgive them and cut it. You know what I mean? It's not condoning what they're doing, but it's not holding it against them for forever. And likewise, I personally do not think it makes you a doormat if you forgive someone, because it takes unbelievable amounts of moral fortitude and character to forgive someone, especially when they've done the unforgivable. So I'll only speak for myself. When someone really does forgive, rather than being a doormat, I kind of look at those people like they're a hero. In real life, you can choose to enforce the personal boundaries about 100% faithfulness. So it's not a doormat thing. Okay, and then finally, most people think that forgiveness is an emotion. Mainly, they confuse forgiveness with feeling like everything is fixed, or like everything's the way it was, that kind of thing. No. In real life, forgiveness is a choice, and it's a decision. It's an intellectual exercise. Just like you notice, love is also a choice to act in a loving way and treat someone in a loving way. Commitment is a choice to pursue happiness within your marriage. So you put your marriage is the highest commitment, happiness, and then you say, okay, what are some things that make me happy? How can I achieve happiness within the bounds of my marriage? Because my marriage commitment is higher, right? The proactive thing we talked about yesterday. Here, same thing. Here, you do the forgiveness, and it's a choice that you choose to do this. So, yet again, not a feeling, but a choice. Okay, so let's look at what is forgiveness, actually. If you look at Merriam-Webster, I tend to like to do this. Let's define our terms so that we're talking about the same thing. Okay? If you look at Merriam-Webster, forgiveness is, they say that it's a deliberate intellectual decision to give up resentment, or, and this is the part I love, claim to requital for a perceived offense, ceasing to demand punishment or restitution. Wow. Is that a great definition or what? In layman's terms, forgiveness is giving up your right to hurt them because they hurt you. And it is allowing your disloyal spouse room for error and weakness. In other words, you're a human being, same as me. So, yeah, I personally have to be honest with you, I love that definition, because really, when you don't forgive, what it is that you want to keep hold of that claim that I had a perceived offense against me. I want to be able to demand punishment for it. Okay? So, when you forgive, you let go of that. You let the perceived offense, let go. Right? The demand for punishment, my hand's off that. So, I just think that's cool. That's a very good way of envisioning it. To do forgiveness, there are 5 steps to forgive, and I have some kind of good Bible verses to go with the steps. I try to do like a Bible verse on every other step. So the first one is to be willing to forgive. In Colossians 3:13, we are told to bear with each other and forgive one another if any of you has a grievance against someone. Forgive as the Lord forgave you. So part of forgiveness is, maybe you're not very good at it, but get to a point where your heart is willing to forgive the other person. That is just, I don't mean the affair other person, I mean your spouse, that other person in your relationship. Be willing to bear with them and forgive them because the Lord forgave you, and look at what you did. So we're told to bear with one another and forgive one another. Yeah, let's do that. Let's get our heart into a place where we're willing. Next, the next step, if you will, is to take small steps. I think one of the things that makes it really hard to forgive is that, especially in an affair, is that it's such a big leap. It's like, I can't forgive. It's like jumping over the Grand Canyon. It's too big. So instead of looking at it like you have to jump over the whole big Grand Canyon, don't expect to feel all fixed and forgiven immediately. Don't have expectations like you're just going to forget about, I forgive you, and so now, what? Oh, that never happened. You're not just going to forget about it right away. Just take one step at a time, one day at a time. When you notice the thought pop into your head that's sort of angry or unforgiving, I stop in the name of love, and then think of something positive real quick. One day at a time, one thought at a time. And then another little step I suggest is, if you do fall off and you kind of have the unforgiving thing and you're just wrestling with it, as soon as you realize that you've fallen off back into the unforgiveness thing, get right back on. Just keep on forgiving again. Now, the Lord does not just He forgives us, and then He has to keep re-forgiving us all the time because we keep going back. Okay, He forgave us. It's done. We are forgiven. That is the state we are in. But since we also do keep continuing this, He forgives us day by day by day by day of the thing we did that day. So do that same sort of thing. That's what I'm talking about when I say small steps. Every day, just keep at it. Okay. So the first one was be willing. The second one, take small steps. The third step is to leave your anger behind. In Ephesians 4, verses 31 and 32, we are told, get rid of all bitterness, rage, and anger, brawling and slander, along with every form of malice. Be kind, compassionate to one another, forgiving each other, just as in Christ God forgave you. Well, let's be honest. When your spouse does, is unfaithful, the fact of the matter is you feel kind of bitter about it. And I think it's a human response to feel bitter over that magnitude of a betrayal. You might feel the rage and anger. for sure you feel slander, because what you want to do is, like, they're talking all this bad talk about you, you want to talk bad about them back, right? And malice would be, yeah, they hurt you, you want to hurt them back. These are the kind of things we're told in Ephesians to leave that behind and to be kind and compassionate to one another and forgive one another. I would think even if your spouse is continuing, like they've hardened their heart and they've continued on with their affair, let go of the bitterness and say, well, you know what? I'll still be civil to you and have some compassion for the fact that you must be hurting awfully badly to continue to be such a hateful person. You can let go of the anger and leave that behind. Okay, the fourth step is to be kind and forgive yourself. This one is kind of a weird one. I don't really have a Bible verse for this one, but what happens is so often we get mad at our spouse for what they've done, but we're also get mad at ourselves for not noticing the red flags, for behaving the way we did when there were troubles in the marriage and we kind of let it go, for the things we did wrong to contribute, or like if you're the disloyal spouse, you get mad at yourself for the actions you did. And part of forgiving does involve looking at your own self and admitting what you did was wrong, admit it to yourself and your spouse and to God, and then to forgive your own self. And that means, same as this, let go of the slander that you talk about yourself, and let go of the malice that you hold toward yourself. You did the wrong thing, and graciously God has provided a way for us. So get right with Him and then move on. The last step in forgiveness is don't hold it over their head. I think, speaking here now as a disloyal, I know one of the biggest fears disloyal spouses have, I think, is the fact that it's going to be held over their head for the rest of their lives. It's like this gigantic sword over their head, and at any minute, the spouse can drop that sword and cut their head off. Okay? So, don't hold it over their head. For that one, I used Matthew 5:23-24. If you are offering your gift at the altar, and there you remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar. First, go and be reconciled to your brother, and then come and offer your gift. The reason I use that verse is because look at what a priority is given to forgiveness. Look at how important it is. You're there, in this instance, going to the altar would be, you're going to the presence of God. The equivalent now would be, you're maybe going to pray or you're going to church, and there you're going to worship God. That's the intent, what you're trying to do. And as you're there, you remember, hey, my brother, I've done something against this brother that harmed them, or they kind of are holding a grudge against me or something. And what does it say? Leave the gift, leave the altar, leave church, stop praying, and go get things right with that brother. That's how important it is to reconcile things. And because that is such a high priority, this is why I equated that with don't hold it over their heads, because it is a priority to God for us to work, to reconcile things and get right with each other. And then we go and worship Him and get right with Him. And I'm not saying the order is get it right, like you just would not worry about getting it right with God. I'm talking about, look, this is important. If you're there and you're going to be, I'm singing worship music, I'm singing praise music. No, go and get things right with your brother. Work it out. And it's important. So don't hold it over their head. To me, the biggest part was just like the definition says, let go of your claim for punishment. When the thoughts do return, just tell yourself, I have forgiven them, and I won't think about this anymore. Like I said, stop in the name of love. I have forgiven them. I'm not going to think about this anymore. To aid in the forgiveness, educate yourself. Now here, I'm talking about the more you know and understand what happened, why it happened, where did we go wrong, the better you can forgive because you understand it. Now, sometimes you have to forgive what you don't understand, and that's okay. We're still not let off the hook. But educate yourself, and you will find that it's a little easier to forgive. And finally, I'm going to just remind you of something. The source of forgiveness is not within you. It's not yourself, but it's God. Remember the sins from which you have been forgiven. God knows that we're weak, selfish, and the people who commit adultery, despite his warnings and commandments, he knows we're weak. So he provided a way for us to break out of our destruction and destructive sinful patterns, and that's Romans 5:8 tells us. God demonstrated his love toward us, and that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. So just remember, the source of forgiveness is not you. It's from God. Okay, tomorrow we are starting the next little topic on how to reconcile. It's a weird one. It's called Moo and WTFS. Now, I hope this piques your interest, because I'm not going to tell you what that means till you come back tomorrow. And then we'll be finishing up the week with some more videos on the other steps to reconciling after an affair. And there's some really good stuff. We've put the best stuff toward the end. So keep coming back. We'll see you tomorrow. Thanks. Bye-bye.